Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV, where we believe that everyone has the potential to be a giant in their own world. Hang tight, because in this episode, you will discover what it takes to unlock your highest potential. This is a show you're going to want to watch. So it's time to wake up with Giants and embrace your inner giant. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan the Lion. I am the author of a new book that's coming out soon. Hint, hint, wink, wink. It's coming. Get ready for this. I'm excited to finally say, hey, Ryan is an author. That's been something that's been like buried way deep inside for a while. So, and then I'm also the co-creator of the 12 Journeys Coaching and co-host of Wake Up with Giants TV. And guess what? The reason why we're all here is because of Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls. You can find that book on Amazon. It's amazing. But before we begin today, we've got a couple of announcements. Right now, we're running a Sum Gigante group. That's our group coaching. You're going to want to watch for the next one. This is Sum Gigante 9. So we'll have our 10th one coming up soon, probably on a Wednesday or a Thursday. So watch for that. Nick and I still have to create the dates on that, but we'll get that out. We're speaking to doTERRA on the February 22nd to their leaders at their facility. So that's going to be amazing. If you haven't joined the Tribe of Giants, it's on Facebook, A Tribe of Giants. It's a great place to get support, meet other giants around the world. The other day, one of our other giants met another giant in Arizona, and big hugs all around, and it was awesome. I was super jealous because I wanted to be there.
Yeah, all the way from the UK. She flew in and met some giants here in Arizona and had a great time. It was awesome.
It's amazing. And
Yeah.
so that kind of stuff happens in the tribe. So you can make those connections, find people that you resonate with, and also that you can lean on for some support. And then YouTube is a great place to find our content. We upload all our stuff there. So go to Wake Up with Giants TV, hit the alert button, subscribe, and hit the alert button, so then you know when we go live every single dang time. Um, Man, did I miss anything, Nick? What am I
No, you're
missing
doing
there?
great. Yeah,
Hey,
you can make
thanks.
something up, but I
I
think you got it
probably
all.
would.
Yeah.
After that, I probably would. Could you introduce our guest for us today?
I would love to. So, as a developmental psychologist, Leslie Bosch, PhD, she's a doctor. Can we call you Dr. Bosch?
Yeah,
Would
call
that
me Dr. Leslie.
Dr. Leslie? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
She empowers leaders to fulfill their highest potential through mindset and behavior change. Her approach is rooted in mindfulness, neuroscience, emotional intelligence, and positive psychology. She's worked with leaders from many of the top Fortune 100 organizations. This experience has provided her with an understanding of the challenges leaders and professionals face in high pressure environments. At her company, Bosch Integrative Wellness, Leslie practices an integrative approach that empowers leaders to seize control of their health and wellness and strike a healthy work-life balance. So we're glad to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hey, we
Well,
love you already. Look at that.
yeah, well, thank you so much for the kind remarks. Yes, and how exciting are your programs? That's really great.
Thank you.
I should jump in and join some of these. I would
There-
love to meet more giants.
There's some good topics in there. It's not from anything we've shared. It's from everything our guests share. And I love that you're a developmental psychologist and that you use that in your work. And I think we'll hang around that area today a little bit, if that's okay.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
we really love to dive into your journey and your story and kind of see where you've been, where you are, where you're going. And so if we could go back in time to where this all began for you, when did you have an awakening that said, this is what I want to do with my life? And what was going on prior to that?
Well, really, before I started my business, like many Americans, I was working long hours in a very demanding job. And unfortunately, I was really also mismanaging my stress. I was eating lots of junk food. I wasn't exercising. I was sleeping poorly. I was snapping at my husband because I was tense all the time. And I wasn't taking any time to recharge and have fun. So I didn't really realize it at the time, but I was unwittingly like trading my well-being, my health, and my personal relationships for success in my career.
Hmm.
And believe it or not, those same behaviors started basically have consequences, right? I started to have some high blood sugar. I started to gain some weight. And basically, I started to think, oh my gosh, I need to really do something about this. Of course, I didn't really know what to do. I was experiencing some burnout as well, and I didn't understand that. So I started looking around for places for help. Right. And I came across a wellness workshop offered through the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine, where I really learned about an integrative approach to health and wellness. And I really started to clean up my act in all these core areas. And I really started to feel better. And after that, I really decided that I wanted to try and help others do the same.
Hmm. I want to highlight how human you are. And I love this because before the show, you shared, man, I'm really nervous. And here you have all this information and knowledge that you know about psychology and the mind. And you've talked to Fortune 100 companies, something I haven't done, right? And you come on a show like this and you still feel the nerves, right? I love that. And I just want to highlight that. And whether it's okay or not, I just did that. But here we are on
Surprise!
the other side. Yeah, surprise. I threw you into that. But can we speak to that a little bit of even with all the knowledge in the world, there can still be some of those insecurities in us. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I loved this whole notion of the unconscious behaviors, really, right? That keep us sort of functioning below our potential.
Mm.
And this is why I really believe that knowledge is power, because really you don't know what you don't know.
Mm.
And in part, my journey really has been to discover all and to transform all those many life-limiting unconscious behaviors, right? And over the years, I've discovered many of them. And in your case, being nervous about the show is really just, again, that wanting to contribute in ways that are meaningful for you and wanting to do a good job and wanting to add value to your listeners and basically still just being in the process of learning. I'm new to all these podcasts. I'm new to all these things, but as a business owner, again, you keep pushing yourself to get out there and to do these things.
I'm curious of like, because that's amazing. Like that to me, I felt the same way. I was like, this is Dr. Leslie, and then you're like, I'm nervous, and it was like, okay, but I'm curious because as you were describing the things that were going on with inside of you, I'm like, I'm looking inside of a mirror right now. You're describing like a lot of what's gone on inside of me, and then I'm starting to go, okay, well, what do you do? How do you figure that out? What did you do? Because there's a lot of people that would look at that and relate at least to something in what you said because they probably experienced some of that. Could you dive into that just a little bit of like what you did and how you did it?
Well, one of the for me, I really, like I said, it really is knowledge. It really is going out and trying to learn new things, trying to expose yourself to new opportunities. There's a big part of us that wants to sort of stay right where it's safe, right in that comfort zone, and basically much rather just be sort of chilling on the couch with my dog having my coffee, right? But instead it's sort of like, no, let me go make some new friends, let me share some new ideas, let me learn, let me practice craft my mastery, as it were, right? Grow up my ability to be comfortable on these kinds of shows, and especially when we're live streaming and just sort of sharing my knowledge and understanding.
Yeah, I'm going to chunk this down. Okay. So we'll give you some topics here to kind of dive into, but I've been thinking a lot this week about the unconsciousness that goes on, the non-conscious part of us that tends to be our personality, our attitudes. It makes up our perceptions of the world and how impactful that is. You as a developmental psychologist, my understanding, and maybe you can shed light on this, is that between the ages of 0 and 25, we're in development, right? And then from 25 on, we go into actually age 24 on, we go into cognitive decline. And so there's a lot of this that happens in that developmental stage that we're not aware of. And it influences our lives. I think Carl Jung called it, we think it's happening to us. We call it our fate in a way. I'm butchering that quote. But the idea
I didn't know
here,
the quotes. To me, it was amazing, Nick.
yeah, well, I'll butcher the quote and then I'll tell you I butchered the quote. It helps me. So looking at development, the idea that we have, these primary values that are handed to us from our culture, our society, our family. It's almost like you come here and it's like, here's your clothes, put these on, right? And then we go on developing our own version of that through the rest of our life. How impactful is that period? How do people access what's non-conscious and how do they handle that? This is a lot to throw at you when they do wake up to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. These are such wonderful, I love this. So where to start?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. When we're young, we are just sponges and we're just soaking up everything that's being given to us. And we don't understand at the time that our parents really sort of are what they call mediators for the society at large, right? They are kind of representatives of the cultural values at the time. And they're doing their best to really sort of get you, as it were, up to speed so that you can join the big game of life that's going on out there that you will eventually take up when you become, of age, right?
Wow.
When you come of age.
That I want to highlight that. What a picture, right? That your parents are the ones that teach you how to integrate with society as it is today, right? Like that's just a powerful image to me. But keep going if you remember where you left off. If I interrupt you, just hang on to where you leave off, okay?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So yes, and the thing that we don't understand as kids is really that is kind of a microcosm, right? So it's one interpretation or one example of what's sort of possible in the world. And you're absolutely right. We come into the world, even like, for instance, with our language, ready to adopt our mother tongue, right? We come with this sea of infinite possibilities with regard to the types of sounds that we can make. But once we're introduced to our language, immediately much of that is pruned away and we are just left with that subset. And that's the subset really essentially that we use for the rest of our life. Now, this is what's true for language. Now, this also happens for mindsets, for beliefs, for understandings about how the world works, who we are, how the world works, who others are, and what we can expect from them.
Yeah. I'm going to hang on to that thought. So the cognitive pruning, right? So all this information comes in, we soak it all up, and then we start pruning off things, right? So we take it all in and then we prune out what doesn't serve us anymore. So we're introduced by our parents to the society as a whole, one version of it. And then our parents introduce us to culture, which are other people that also bring in information about how society works. And so we have this parental identification. In some cases, people don't get that, but they have this cultural assimilation, right? And so as that develops, we start to establish our value systems, which is what we hold as valuable or worthy or worth something. And then we create our personalities. And what blows my mind is how long that stays with those preferences, how long they stay with us. Does that tie into what you're going to share next?
Absolutely. And that really sort of is what it is, right? The opportunity to broaden your horizons again and try and recognize that, the way my parents taught me is but one, right, of many ways that I could do this, or even the conclusions that I drew as a child sitting at my parents' feet, right, are but one of many conclusions that I can draw from my experience with my parents or with my peers, with my teachers, with my culture. Right. For me, this was like a huge thing because I grew up in a very heterogeneous world. I really had very little exposure to difference. So when I moved to New York City, I really sort of had my mind blown because New York City is one of the greatest places that a person can go and learn about difference. and come to understand that, in fact, there really are 1,000 ways to skin a cat. And that a lot of times these are the things we're arguing about. A lot of times people do want the same ends, but the means, the way we go about it, are often very different and can bog us down and can create a lot of difficulty.
Yeah, the show Zootopia. Have you seen that? They're a family of rabbits, and they're born in the I don't know, I'm losing the word. That's crazy. They're born
The briar?
out in the sticks, right?
In the briar, yeah.
But then she goes to the city, Zootopia, and it's like you said, New York. So she gets this experience of diversity and culture and shift, and so her whole world, her whole perspective shifts by that introduction to that. But there are still these core values that follow her through, right? Personality, if we really look at that, and how well, and I want to look at the influence too of trauma and neglect on that development and how those impact, because you talk about kids have this experience where they listen to their parents or their culture, and they get these ideas and they assimilate those, but then something comes along and they make meaning of those, and something comes along and interrupts that, right? Trauma or neglect, or along those lines. How does that impact, and how can somebody create some space for that to be what it was? Does that make sense?
Well, I think that really is for me, I'm coming to say that is kind of, in a way, the definition of grief. Grief is really where your assumptive worldview, like what you've assumed about the world, because again, it's so important to understand as human beings that who we are is people who make maps or models of the world. Based on lots and lots of data, we sort of distill it down into a handful of sort of shortcuts, assumptions, hunches, theories, right? But the truth of the matter is that it's often, this is what really helped me when I got my PhD, is because I really learned about the scientific method. So I really came to understand how we can fail to get enough data, first of all, to draw a certain conclusion, right? And then that often we can bring the wrong interpretation to the data. And then the other thing that we can do is we can overgeneralize the data, right? So this ultimately, I think, is the thing later in life where hopefully we can get a hold of some of those, like you said, deep-rooted hunches or theories or beliefs about who we are, about how the world works, about what really matters, about how you interact with others, especially, and come to understand that, that was my first understanding. Now, like a draft of a book, I can revise it, I can upgrade it, I
New
can
version.
change it in order to better fit reality.
Or bring in more evidence and testing that
Yes.
takes it from a sense of certainty, right? The
Yes.
speculation, and brings it into a knowledge. Because that's what science, this is what I love about science, is the ability to go out there and really test things.
Yes.
If a scientist is out there, or somebody's going out there from that point of view, that scientific method, the goal isn't to prove your theory right. The goal is to prove it wrong. But evidence comes in and says, look, regardless of what you're trying to do here to show that this isn't happening, right? First, you come up with the hypothesis, this is how life works. And then you go test it. And your goal is to poke the holes in it. And like you said, if you don't put enough evidence into it, then you go around with these assumptions thinking this is the way life works.
Yes.
You have this single experience in development that says, I can't trust people because, and we hold on to that, but there's supporting evidence out here that says, no, you can do that. So you have this chance to rewrite.
Yes.
Does that bring something up in you as you hear
Absolutely. That's exactly. It's a lovely restatement. Exactly. So that is really the process. So you mentioned, so everybody's in exactly the same boat. We come into the world, we are kind of quote unquote indoctrinated, programmed, socialized, and culturated, whatever word you want to use. And we are, all of us, at the mercy, as it were. We're sort of victims of circumstances, products of environments, because we really are, as children especially, at the mercy of the folks around us, of the knowledge that's inside of our system that we actually have access to. So we are wholly dependent on our caregivers and those around us, kind of like almost by random assignment, right?
Mm.
So by definition, this is kind of where that inequality comes into play, because not everybody is getting access, as it were, to best practice, to recipes for success, for functional families, for secure attachment, all these types of things. So a lot of us come out of our families, which are for us our first sort of schoolhouse, if you will, right?
That
And we are
anchor.
more or less well prepared to cope or live in society.
We don't have access to the best practices. That right there, if I could highlight a sentence from this whole show, that's all that happened, right?
Yep. Yep.
So as an adult, if you didn't have access to the best practices, then as an adult, I've seen this in research recently, is reparent yourself and give
Yes.
yourself access to the
Yes.
best practices.
Yes.
Instead of retelling the story again and again, I can't do it because now you have a chance to say, well, I couldn't do it before because, but now I have access to all these resources. Now I can do something about it.
Exactly. And that takes us back to that whole growth mindset. Now, we also have to understand about human beings that human beings, by definition, are meant, to stay the same. We are creatures of habit. We are, like many of our cells, is like a lovely sort of metaphor. Our cells come in when we are first born, they're like pluripotent, which means they could become any kind of cell, right? Stem cells. But once they're dedicated, then they need to stay the same in order to maintain a healthy relationship with the rest of the body. Like when they stop saying the same, this is a lot of times where we get cancer or we get illness, we get problems. So we have a mechanism inside of us really that wants to keep us the same. And it's called basically confirmation bias. And we go around in the world looking to confirm our pre-existing ideas about the way, again, who we are, how the world works, what we can expect for others, how to engage with others, what's important.
And we can find confirmation in all of it. Regardless of what we believe, we can find confirmation for that, right?
Yes, yes. So a lot of times it really does, usually when people break out, like, look, let's face it, if you got a really healthy and your healthy upbringing and your life is steeped, you've been indoctrinated in best practices, you really don't need to change. You can just be out there cranking it out, having success, doing well, until you bump up against something that says, like, wait a minute, you need to stop and take a look. Other people, when they run up against challenges, when they're not satisfied in their life, when they continue to have they want more than they have, or they continue to have certain difficulties, this is really good news, because now there's really an opportunity to start casting about, looking for information that can really help you enrich your life and help you look again at those pre-existing ideas about things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so cool. Like I'm having this visual imagery of how this could work, right? There's a study done on slime mold and how they put pieces of oats on certain subway stations, and the slime mold went out in every direction. And then it found the most efficient pathways. And it was actually as efficient or more efficient than the current subway system. And with the mental mapping that we do is we mental map from who we are. So it's like that slime mold. We're out there expanding out and making this map of our environment. And we know we can count on this thing being there, and that thing we can't count on it being there. So we move away from that. We move toward this, but we're constantly putting our feelers out. But what happens is in that environment is that we create this stability. So we anchor in these pathways to these things. We have this bonding or attachment to people or things or ideals, right? And going back to the idea of grief is when that bonding and that attachment gets severed, like that thing that we could count on, we can't count on it anymore. That's right. And so we have to remap that whole thing. We have to find a workaround because that's no longer accessible to us. And that's, I think what happens with trauma is that there was this interruption. This thing you could count on was interrupted, and there was no remapping. Like there wasn't a chance to really grieve it the way that grief is meant to be grieved, which is swinging back into it and healing it small bits at a time and coming out of it, right? But not ever letting go of that thing. I'm on a rant, so stop me anytime here, okay? But that
That's a good
idea
rant,
is
Nick.
that we map out this world and we think we know what we can count on. So we look for confirmation of that, right? Like what you're describing here. And then there's this severing, right? The way we thought it should be, the way we thought it could be. There's a severing that's called grief, but then we make ourselves terrible because of it. And that's called depression or anxiety. It's like, and shame. So now it's not just a thing happened, it's we're bad because that thing happened. What did that bring up for you?
Absolutely. Well, and a lot of times you're absolutely right. Like a best practice is to understand, for me, around grief, what I've come to understand is that a best practice really sort of is to understand that I am building, that I'm essentially a map maker, a model builder, if you will. And that by definition, as a human being, I have limited access to the full scope of all the knowledge, right? Like I will never, my maps will forever be changing and enriching and incorporating more of the reality as I go out and make contact with it, right? So once I really understand the nature of the human condition, then essentially what I can become is a better map maker, a better model maker. This is kind of where humility comes into it, because I enter any new situation, as I did with you, with some hopes, for some expectations, but ultimately I really don't know what I'm going to find. But I am open to discovering more things about you, about me, about our interaction, about your audience, about who I am, who you are, and how we might, again, interact, what the world is. So then I can go away having learned some new things and incorporate perhaps some of that into my learnings or into my understanding, my map, my model.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, we talk about the limitless capacity of the human mind, 2.5 petabytes of information that can be stored in a single brain. That's more than enough to store the entire internet. Yet we're limited in what we hang on to. I mean, if there's all of that, we probably hang on to just a fraction of that, right? So the ability to expand on that comes from that openness and that growth mindset of, hey, there is so much more for me to learn. I can never learn it all. And so that gives you a chance to go into any situation and use that situation as a learning environment, right?
Yes. So for me,
Yeah.
somehow I got it in my head early on. Again, I was I took to school. I thought school was very important. So much so, right, that I took it to the nth degree and got my PhD. But the point is really that I really thought that the way to win at life was to be a know-it-all. I know it all. Therefore, you can't trip me up. You can't catch me off guard. You can't make me wrong. You can't, punish me. You can't, all these kinds of things. I can be safe, right? As a way to be safe, if I know it all, again, if I have a perfect map of the territory, a perfect understanding of the world, then boom, I am golden. Right. So imagine, again, for me, what a disillusionment, what a disappointment when I got through my PhD program and came to really understand that no, nobody can know it all. It's impossible to know it all. But what you can become is a better learner. Right. And a better, like for me, the process of science, which really is to be a better theory maker, a better experiment maker, taker, gatherer of data, a better person to like a better understanding of how to interpret data. Like in other words, you can essentially become a better scientist and a better learner, a better map maker, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I pictured an iceberg, right? As a PhD, it's like I went to the tip of the iceberg. There's all this information. I went to the tip of that iceberg. Well, as a PhD, then you learn as you get to the tip of that iceberg, there's a million other icebergs out there that you haven't even been down. But the method that you're talking about is similar in this iceberg as it would be with another. So as you learn something here, you would take that method and move it over to another thing, and you would do the same thing. You would narrow it down until you get to the tip of that iceberg, and you would do it again infinitely. We call that a fractal. Benoit Mandelbrot calls it a fractal.
Yes.
But there is no limit, only in our limitations that we put on ourselves. I was having a conversation the other day. Ryan went to a men's retreat this week. And I told one of the gentlemen about it that I work with, and he said, "Oh yeah, I know all about those things. They do kumbaya and all this. I know all about it." And it's like what you say. It's like you can be a know-it-all and not have any learning. And it's like that guy didn't have any opening for space to learn anything new about what Ryan was doing out there because he already knew it all, right? So how can you learn anything if you already know it all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest things that can interfere. Again, that's that confirmation bias. So essentially that person was sort of falling prey to the default way that human beings operate around confirmation bias, which is essentially say, I already checked that out. I already made my determinations, and there's nothing really that's going to alter my belief or my understanding, my appraisal, my evaluation of that thing. And I'm not going to give it another look, see, because I've really sort of already made my determination. Now, that's okay. I mean, we need to understand that as human beings, we do have to make choices. We cannot do and be and go everywhere and everything, know everyone, right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, we do have to come up sort of with our sense of where we want to invest our time. Right. And if your life is working well for you, right, then you're good. Go for it. Like if you're sort of I love Seligman's work on positive psychology, and where people are thriving. If you are thriving, then you probably already have a lot of this figured out and you're in good shape. Continue to do what you're doing. But if you're struggling, if things are breaking down, this is where the good news is. Help is out there, and there are things that you can do, new ways. For instance, for me, I always think about garbage in, garbage out, right? You've probably got some recipes for disaster. You can get rid of those and exchange them for recipes for success. You can get best practice. You can make new friends. You can try new things. And this is the good news. This is the good news.
Yeah, if we stay along the lines of map making, right? You have this way of being, you have your justifications and your judgments that come up within that way of being, which can inhibit learning. And so some of that was handed to you. So as a kid, you're coming through and you're developing, and then you're putting your own into that. And then you go out looking for confirmation that you're seeing the world right. So you ask people and they say, oh yeah, that's the way it is. And then you find somebody else that says, no, that's not how I see it. And some people would say, look, I'm not even open to hearing you about what you're saying because I'm looking for this. So they won't even hear that new way. Whereas those that are in a growth mindset, and what we would call the giant mindset, they're going to look at that and say, look, there's opportunity to look at this a little differently. Maybe I don't know all there is to know about how this world works. We've learned tons from this show, from people like you that have the expertise behind them, that share things that we never even thought of, like grief, the importance of grief in your journeys and how to navigate that. Can we talk about acknowledgement and acceptance and the power of that in transformation?
Yeah, that's a tough one sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we really want what we want, and I don't want to accept, right?
Right.
I know. Yeah, I really want to reject. I really want what I want, and I'm just not going to accept. So it's very difficult to know when it's time to accept that, because sometimes acceptance can lead to some resignation, right? Again, and can put us into that place of that sort of defeatist mindset in which we kind of are saying to ourselves, so I have a feeling this isn't exactly what you mean by acceptance, but
I'm open to learning.
But there are a few ways we could look at acceptance. I think that ultimately at the end of the day, we are trying to do self-acceptance, in which we are essentially trying to accept, well, the reality, like what is the human condition, right? Or to accept that we might not get what we want, that we might not be able to gain access to the things that we desire. But more, I think it's coming to be okay with the miracles that we can work, if you will. I don't know if that's kind of what you're wanting or what you're looking for.
That ties in. I'll pull some more information in. Maybe this will help you. Is when people wake up to their way of being and they want to do something about it. They want to transcend that. Often they get stuck in justification or judgment about whatever that is. They tell a story that says this is why I do it and why I can't change, which would be acceptance from resignation, right? Or they get into judgments about who they are because of what they've done or where they are, which leads to depression, anxiety, and mental health issues. Both of those keep them spun up in the same story. So a resignation or a spinning up in the mental side of that about your worthiness, right? When somebody wakes up from a space of observer, like what you would do as a doctor is to observe and gather information, that shifts because now it's an acceptance from the space of acknowledgement. Oh, hey, there's this in my space. Oh, I did that in my past, as an acknowledgement, but not a judgment, right? There may be grief that comes up inside of that, which would say, I'm sad that it's not where I thought it would be. But that doesn't move it back to judgment unless you move it to judgment, which says I'm terrible because that's what happened. So moving into the space of acceptance would be, and I love that you put two parts to this, a resignation or acknowledgement, right? If you're in the space of an observer, you'll move into the space of acknowledging what is or what has been in your life. If you move into the space of resignation, you'll move back into the stories and the judgments about why you are where you are in your life. Does that tie into where you're going?
Yes, absolutely. I'm
Okay.
reading the yes, because essentially that gives us, I love what the Facebook user you put up there was
Yeah.
saying essentially about leaning into, again. So again, going back and trying to stay in that growth mindset, trying to stay in that place, for me, like that sea of infinite possibilities. That for me was really when I had my aha moment, where I woke up and I got to that place where it's like, oh, I can sense, as it were, back to that quantum field where you really don't know what is going to happen in the next moment, where it really is just raw potential. You have what you hope will happen. You have what you maybe fear will happen. You probably have what happened, the option also that what happened yesterday will happen today. But the point is, you really don't know. And when you get back to that place, really sort of awe in the face of like that sort of raw potential that I do not know. Because I don't know what's going to come from the outside world, and I don't know what's going to come from the inside world either. For all I know, I had a beloved massage therapist who just dropped dead of a heart attack. Boom, just like that. So the point is, I don't even know what's going to come from inside of me at any moment, like as an option, as a potential. So for me, I had a big change in my life when I moved out of that certainty. I know what's going to happen, or I just assume that what's coming, what I want or what I planned is going to happen, into that sea of infinite possibilities where I recognized, okay, I have a sketch of what I'd like to have happen today. I have a sketch of where it's headed, but I really have no idea what's going to happen. And I need to be open.
How much freedom does that create in you?
Well, then the next challenge was actually to be like, okay with all that uncertainty.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we cling to certainty because as human beings, we want certainty. And it's hard to be with uncertainty. But it does kind of get you excited again, because now you feel that you're back in the game somehow. You're alive again, rather than like sort of wooden and dead. You are, or a puppet. You are now like alive again.
Yeah, that is powerful. I'm having all kinds of confirmation bias going on because I have this assumption, this theory, this hypothesis that we move through these root journeys, and once we get okay with not being okay, okay with our story, okay with everything that's ever happened, when we look ahead, we notice, like you just said, that uncertainty, which is one of our journeys, now everything becomes possible. Like Margaret Drabble says, when nothing is sure, everything is possible, which includes that there could be a new possibility of you as well as a new possibility out here, right? But when we get into the certainty, we think we know what's happening out here, and we think we know who we are in relation to that. And what you're offering here, what you're giving us, is that This isn't certain. That's not certain. It's all rewritten every day as we bring it up. Somebody used the analogy of clay or Play-Doh right out of the box, right? That you take it out of the box and you remold that into something else and you put it back to the original shape. It will never be in the same order it was when it came out of the box. Every time you pull it out and move that and shift it and then try and put it back, it goes back in a different form. The molecules are arranged differently, everything. That's what happens with our stories as we pull them out and go out there and map out the world and come back. We will never be the person that went into that experience again. Can you speak to that a little bit? Does that give you anything to speak about, maybe?
Well, I think there you're really talking about that neuroplasticity, right? So regardless of what happens, there is something new. I think it's funny because for me, I always use the metaphor of the Play-Doh really sort of being like, oh, I get it. I am the Play-Doh and I can morph into a variety of shapes. So for me, that's where I sort of saw the same and different. Like I am the Play-Doh,
cool.
but I don't have to remain in this configuration. I can alter my configuration. And in altering my configuration, that can make a world of difference with regard to the quality, essentially, of my experience of being Play-Doh, if you will.
I'm having an assumption that we're reading the same books here. So that's cool. Yeah, the neuroplasticity is the ability to not even mold yourself back to the original shape, right? You don't even have to do that.
Right, or just the awareness that I am life force and that I can do with my life force what I want. I can change what I elect to do. Right. For me, a lot of times, another metaphor that I love is really sort of that I am like kind of like one of those portfolio managers. Right. Essentially, I am that which invests. And sometimes my investment may go south. Sometimes my investment may pay off. But ultimately, I am that which invests, and I am that which, most importantly, can divest and reinvest. Wow. So we're always kind of catching sight of that new stock. And that stock might be a vision of myself. It might be a business. It might be a love. It might be a skill. It might be any number of things that I can say, oh, I elect to divest from that so that I can invest in this, reinvest in this. Yeah, wow. And once I got free of that, because that's another big problem that human beings have. We have this thing called sunk costs. We hate if it's a losing thing, we hate to divest.
Yeah, we want put all this into it. Why?
Make it work. Right? We want to make it work. We want to make it work. So human beings sometimes can have a horrible time cutting losses and moving on to something else.
Let's talk about vision. So when you get into this, being okay with all this mess in here, whatever that looks like, and what you've created, getting okay with that, looking at possibility that nothing's written in stone, not even you. So none of that's written in stone. Now we look into vision and being able to see, look, not only is nothing written in stone, but I have all these resources around me that I can play with. The Play-Doh, in a sense, because beyond the Play-Doh is still the person that molds the Play-Doh. Right? Going back to Hugh's comment, we are not the Play-Doh. We are the molder of the Play-Doh. We are the investor. So we can shape it into anything we want. So we look out here and all of these resources are there. And then we go into vision. And I've been looking into Helen Hadsell and her work. And she talks about vision. When you have vision, you go through this process of selecting, right? Projecting, expecting, and collecting. And so what happens, what I see in my own world is I select what I want out of this possibility out here. And then I project it out and ask for it. And I say, this is what I'm going to create. And I call the shot, right? And then I go into this expectation of how that's going to turn out. And a lot of times that expectation goes right into my past and pulls up this information and says, hey, remember the last time we did this and it didn't go so well? And so then I don't put energy into it because I had this thought that it's going to go like that again, right? Versus that's unwritten. The word trust comes from a confident expectation, and our expectations about how the world's going to go comes from what we think happened in the past, right?
That's right.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Do you have a version of that?
Yes, absolutely. You're right. Right. What's the best predictor of the future? The past.
Hmm.
So that is a thing that we absolutely do. And so I think that is the challenge for me, I learned about this, like, for instance, if I think about, well, there's so many wonderful theories that are out there that help with this. But for instance, if you just even think about, for me, marketing right now, I'm in marketing. So I
Yeah.
think, how many opportunities am I going to how many appearances to get like one lead, right? So the
Yeah.
point is again, changing the nature of your expectations such that they are more in alignment perhaps with what we know about the world. So less about what you know from your personal experience and maybe more about what we know is possible in the world. So I think for me, changing the understanding of what we can hope for, even though you never know, right? You always have that opening, like, well, it's according to what we know about reality. This is
Wow.
why I
Yeah.
like science so much. This is probably how it's going to go. This may be more or less like my experience in the past. But the
Yeah.
point is, I'm going to go ahead and try anyway, because I'm gathering more data, because I'm gaining more mastery, because I am looking to increase the odds that I will succeed. Like, right, sitting on the couch, 100% odds of failure. But if I get out there, I increase my odds of success. I don't know at what point I will have I will get what I hope for, if
Yeah. Yeah.
ever. But the point is, I keep trying, because that's the only way I'm going to increase those odds.
This is deeply cryptic and awesome, right? I freaking love this. It's this idea that our what we know is what we have certainty in. What we think we know is what we have certainty in. And then we use that to create our expectations about what's going to happen from that certainty. And going back to your beginning statement, and I'm not holding and locking you in here, it's just something that you shared, is that that's all made up, right? What you think you know is simply what you think you know. Like Einstein says, imagination is more important than knowledge because of that, because we think we know what we know. And imagination takes us beyond that. So imagination also moves us into the space of being willing to grow and learn something that we don't yet know, right? And so that's where, look, you don't know the timing of this. I shared this example last night with a friend that my daughter wanted Snoop slimes for her birthday. Never heard of these things. So I go to the website. I'm like, okay, cool. She had a list of what she wanted. They didn't have that. So I selected what I wanted, right? Close enough to what she had in mind. That's my selecting it. I asked for it. So I paid for it, projected it. And now, I'm in this expectation stage that that's going to show up in my world for her. And because I paid for it, right? But it's delayed. I thought it would be here a few days ago. Well, now it's going to show up late. So it's still coming. So there's still that expectation that it's coming. I just don't know when, but I have no doubt that it's coming. And when it gets here, I'll collect it and receive it, right? And it's not like it'll get here and be like, I don't want that anymore. Take it back. I could do that, but in most cases, I'll just receive it. But what I don't know is when it's going to get here. And if you put that into imagining in our world, our creations, is sometimes we know what we want. We ask for what we want. And then our expectations kind of what we thought it should be. It's not that. So some people will give up on their hopes. Some people are patient. They'll just wait for it. They just know it's coming. They just don't know when it's coming. And then that final part, to receive it when it does come, take it in, because that gives you new knowledge, right? New confirmation of, hey, this works, or hey, that doesn't yield what I thought it might. What does that bring up for you?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm sort of caught on that. Yeah, what do you do? I love that notion of, like, I'm putting the money in, and eventually my thing that I want will show up. That's like a lovely, again, hope. Hope
Yeah.
is a huge emotion that can carry us forward. But I love what you're saying also about dreaming, right? The potential to catch sight of a new possibility for ourselves, and then to begin to chart a course toward that possibility, and to work our way, and to not know when when we'll get there, how long it will take, what it will look like, what adventures we'll have on the way,
Yeah,
what
beautiful.
kind of challenges, what kind of things we'll learn, the new people, all these kinds of things as we work our way towards that. And that is really sort of, I think, when you wake up to that, rather than clinging to the, oh, I know, because I know where I've been,
Right.
it's like to start to think about like, oh, I want to think more about where I'm going and what's possible.
Yeah, I think it was Rich Litvin that said that vision is where you're coming from, not where you're going. So it's what comes from you. Um, and just tying into that idea of you don't know when it's going to happen or any of that, but you're letting it pull you to it in a sense, right? It's pulling you into that. There's a theory called hope theory, which you touched on, that says when we can see a brighter future, then we also know that we're the ones that are going to create that, and we'll overcome any obstacle to make that creation a reality. And that creates excitement.
Yes.
So when you get stuck in your story, though, we go back to our root journeys. When you get stuck in your story, your goal isn't to envision a brighter future from that story, because that's going to be really hard to do. Your goal is to get okay with where you are and then project a brighter future. Unless maybe you have a variation of that. Is there something that people can do when they're in that intensity of, I don't feel worthy of that, or I don't know if I can do that? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. We absolutely have to feel that when we're thinking about a new possibility, we have to answer 3 questions. Number 1, do I deserve it? And if we cannot say yes wholeheartedly, I deserve that possibility, then we need to stop there and look at that and clear away what it is that's leaving us with the notion that we do not deserve. The second thing we have to believe is that it's possible, right? And this is where role models can be so wonderful, because look, so-and-so did it, and so-and-so did it, and so-and-so did it, and so-and-so did it, and so-and-so did it. Yes, it's possible. And even in some cases, like with these people that completely revolutionize society, we can even say, I don't care if it's possible. I believe it's possible, and I'm going to do it, right? Beautiful. So you don't even have to, but a lot of have that. But role models often help people when they're trying to get towards something, convince themselves that something is possible. And then third, it really has to be that it's possible for me. And I have to believe that if others can do it, that I can do it. Or even if others have never done it, and I'm trying to do something that's never been done, that it is possible to do that thing, for me to do that thing.
And then trusting that, the word trust, going back to the definition of etymologically, a confident expectation, right? That can happen for me. Not only is it possible, but it can happen for me. What a beautiful thing. So overcoming your limiting views of yourself, that's, beliefs, values, whatever, those limiting things, that you really look at those and create an acknowledgement of those. You don't even have to overcome them. Just an acknowledgement is often enough for you to bring them along while you're creating this new thing, while you're trusting, right?
Well, and for me, and for me, like I said, for me, the very liberating thing was like, oh, I was using the wrong strategy. No problem. I can learn a new strategy, and I can use a new strategy. So for me, I was really liberated when I really came to understand that, and my PhD taught me so much about this, about predictors of good outcomes and theories about the way we can kind of go about creating those good outcomes. So then I began to understand that with best practice, you really can make a difference, and you can start to use the best practices and start to notice your life transforming. And that to me was really that was really the liberating moment when the light bulb went off and I understand, like, oh, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. How important are surrender and nurture? And our definition of nurture that we use is taking care of the creator, right? So that you can also take care of the creation, but also letting go of how it comes about. Because I see control being, I know exactly how it's going to come about, and it's going to go that way. And when it doesn't, there's this deep judgment that comes up. But surrender is, I don't know how it's going to come about, but I'm open to whatever way it needs to be. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's lovely to Yeah, because a lot of times we do need to engage in behaviors, right, that will bring us towards what we want. For instance, if you want to lose weight, you've got to engage in the behaviors that have been associated with losing weight. Odds
Right.
are you're not going to just wish your way or will your way or imagine your way into being lean. So I think it's kind of a combination there, that you're hoping that if you engage in these best practices, that again, like I mentioned, you are increasing your odds of success and that you will, like others, arrive and get what you're wanting, get what you're looking for. But yes, I do think that a certain amount of, again, awe, amazement, wonder, openness to
Mm.
something like miraculous kind of happening in your life. That kind of sense that what is it? Luck favors the prepared mind. This
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
I've tried the wishing diet. It's a fad. The beauty of that awe and wonder about life, that wonderment, right?
Yes.
That's really what we're trying to get back to for people
Yes.
is look, the future is yet to be written. And it might appear, people might convince you that it's been written, and you're a certain way within that. And we see people, like you say, revolutionaries. I posted about Martin Luther King Jr., who saw it differently. And he said, no, I don't see it the way you do. And I'm waking up to that. And he started a movement that shifted the world, right? That hadn't been done yet. And so being willing to step into your vision, even when maybe somebody hasn't done it before, being willing to step into it and trust that the way it needs to come about is going to show up by your activity. But you can't sit around and just dream it or wish it. There's got to be that step into it, right?
Yes.
Huh. And then that willingness to learn as you go, that a failure is simply a negative yield from your efforts, and a success is simply a positive yield from your efforts. But
Again,
yeah,
like you say, a judgment, an evaluation, a deeming of that, rather than just simply like, oh, what did you learn? Okay,
right.
success. I just moved the wonder of like moving failures into success
Yeah,
column, basically by saying, what did you learn? And
that's
now you're growing, right?
beautiful. Can you speak to your legacy and what you're giving to the world as a gift from what you're doing? Why are you doing this?
Well, I think that I'm a huge fan of the Emerson poem, right?
Okay.
About the definition of success, really, which is where to just leave the world a bit better, right? Rather to somehow help others breathe easier, help others to improve the quality of their life. I have this over and over and over with my clients, and it is so fulfilling to see people move out of that stuck place into something that they're really excited about, to move towards their goals, to get their goals, and to really improve the quality of their lives, the quality of their experience of being alive. And I love it. I adore it.
Yeah, I love the idea. I had the imagery as you're speaking that of a cartographer that is standing there next to the other person and pointing, let's go this way. Try this out. Let me show you. But you're right there next to him. You're not out in front of him saying, hey, come this way. You're right there next to him saying, let's go explore over here. Did you notice this? But you're seeing it from their point of view. You're right on their side, right?
Yeah.
That's a powerful image right there. Is, and that's what we try to do here, is to help you recognize that you've already got it in you to do everything we just talked about in this show. But now it's helping you to see that you can do more than what you've been doing, right? And to step into
Or
that.
different. Yeah, different,
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
That you can go for what it is for you that's important.
Yep.
A lot of times people come up against that so much like as a developmental hurdle. A lot of times people are trying, like, I love Robert Keegan is my favorite developmentalist, and he talks about moving from third to fourth order mind. A lot of people are trying to move from this world in which they are beholden to others into a realm of development in which they are more in charge of their destiny, more agenic, more driving the agenda, more
Yeah.
liberating, more individuating. And sometimes they're really struggling to be able to let go or to strike that healthy balance between what others think and what they think.
That's beautiful. They move from that creator space or from that reactor space to that creator space, right? So they're no longer reacting to their life, they're creating it. That's powerful.
Right.
Well,
Or being beholden to their loved ones, to their pack, to their tribe,
hmm,
right? But rather beginning to say, maybe I'd like to change things and do things a little bit differently.
hmm,
Sometimes it has to do with there's a misfit between what the tribe wants for them and what they want for themselves.
hmm.
And sometimes having the ability, the support that you need to gain a little bit of that distance and to go a little bit your own way and redefine what's going to be important for you and what you're going to do with your one precious life.
Yeah, beautiful. Ryan, do you have thoughts that are coming up as you hear it?
At first, I want to recognize the viewers and the commenters and those that didn't comment but did inside. Um, like Alina Dumling, like talk about somebody that just loves and supports all of the time and is there and is creating her life in the way of love and service and giving and sharing. And I so appreciate the viewer. And hopefully this message serves. That was the goal as we talked before the show. That was the goal of serving and giving and helping somebody that's out there to be able to take something from this and be able to shift or adjust or mold their hunk of Play-Doh in a way that would serve them, the best that it can. And as you become more aware, I love this too. Is like as you become aware, you can shift and you can adjust and you can mold that into something that serves. So you're not just stuck in the old way of being in that old operating system. Is
Yes.
that your past? You lived your past. It is what it is, but it doesn't have to be what it is moving forward. You can shift that. You can change it. If you want to throw it all out, you can throw it all away. If you want to, you can keep what serves. You can toss everything that doesn't. You could even hold what didn't serve with grace and love and say thank you for keeping me safe and doing the best you could when I was in that moment. But now it's time to shift. It's time to adjust. It's time to grow. And that to me is a beautiful thing. I talked about this in a post, and we say this all the time, Nick. We do a post, and then the next week, I didn't know exactly where this conversation was going to go. I didn't know it was on rewriting stories, and adjusting the future based on your how you see the world and how you can choose to see the world. Uh, I had no idea, but I did a post on worthiness and feeling unworthy at times of love because of some abandonment issues and always having to prove how my worthiness so that people will love me, right? And I had to go back and dive deeper into that. And I've done a lot of work in that department and have grown a ton, but this has helped me to be able to take that and to shift into a new belief system and start operating from something different and change my future and change my reality now. And so if you're feeling that at home, that's possible for you. And if you don't believe it, get around people that do, that see it in
Mm,
you and that
yeah.
believe it for you or with you and can help you. It is really important to be around a good set of people that is going to help you in accomplishing what you want to accomplish or to support you when you go through hard times. Because if you haven't been through those, they're coming. This is life. This is life. It happens. Life happens, right? And so I just want to thank all of you. I want to thank you for all the things that you've been through. We haven't gotten to dive deep into your story. I hope to at some point and continue the conversation, Dr. Leslie, because you're the caliber of a person, of a human being that you are. It's evident, and you're able to take all of that knowledge. Remember how you thought you had to have all the knowledge to be like the perfect person, and nobody could hurt you in that. You got to go do that so that you'd have all this knowledge to lean on to be able to help other people realize that same thing, that doesn't define, who you are, how you are, or your worthiness or any of that. You're able to take those things and now be able to serve other people. And you served me today. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. And thank you for family, friends, anybody that you sacrifice this time for, to be able to serve it, the tribe, and help us to be able to unlock our potential. We appreciate you.
Thank you, man. That was beautiful. Yeah, as you were speaking there, Ryan, I just imagined, like, we all have this map. Some of us take the map that was handed to us and we live within that, right? It's like you live in the United States or wherever you are in the world, and you choose that, and that's where you're going to live out your life. Some people do that. What you've offered today, Dr. Leslie, is that you can add territory to your map. You can add land to your map. You can expand out from what it is into more, right? You can redefine your map, and it's up to each of us. And we're not alone. If you, like Ryan said, if you're having a hard time believing, then lean on people that do believe for you. That's awesome. Do you have any final thoughts, Dr. Leslie, that you want to share?
No, just again, thank you, Ryan. Just expressing gratitude. I really have appreciated watching the comments. I really have appreciated the opportunity to learn more about you and your efforts to create a space where people can come and feel love and appreciation and possibility. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on the show.
You're welcome. For those that are watching, thank you for being a part of this. We do episodes every Sunday. They're usually live. If you can join us for the commenting, that is by far the best part. I love that. Outside of the guests are the best part. The comments come in second. But those comments help us drive the conversation, and they're beautiful. We are so grateful for you as tribe members. And we hope that you'll share this with somebody that you love today, that this could benefit. And as always, go make it a giant day. We'll see you in the next video.
Love you too.